It can happen to any one of us at any time. A crack appears in the world around us, small at first, but it's enough for us to get a glimpse, enough for us to see that beyond all this is something else. But what? Against our better judgment, the lure of the unknown draws us to peek through, and once we do, there's no turning back. Because that crack inevitably begins to expand until you're no longer looking through it, or even at it. You are in it. And the place you started, the world you knew, it's so small that the idea you'd ever be able to get back to it, well, I don't need to say any more. So what is this place? It depends who you are. But one thing is the same for everyone. Peeking behind the curtain of forbidden knowledge in this way, it shatters your sense of yourself, of reality, and that is a very dark place to be. I invite you to be a tourist and step into the minds of those people lost to the unknown, and the scarce few who found a way out, to hear their terrifying stories. But I must warn you, once you climb inside, I can't promise that you won't end up counting yourself among them. What they have to say will change you, bring near what should be kept far, far away. Because there are things we're not meant to know. We're Not Meant to Know, an anthology of horror, now transmitting from SpectreVision Radio.
Walmart Business is in the business of helping your business, regardless of whether you're building bridges, building spreadsheets, or building lesson plans. Ooh, that looks fun. Walmart Business can help save you time, money, and hassle so you can focus on what you're building instead of what your supply closet is missing. In short, we take care of business so you can do more with yours. We're the Walmart you love, now for your business. Learn more at business.walmart.com.
Choice Hotels get you more of what you value. Comfort Inn, it's calling your name. Save on the stay. Oh, and free waffles are yours to claim. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
SpectreVision Radio.
Telemetry and launch condition.
Well, some other observers.
Hey, it's late night.
It's late night on the astral plane, where it's never too late. With your host, Ryan Singer.
It's more fun to believe.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another voyage of Late Night on the Astral Plane. This is your buddy, Ryan Singer. I am joined again by Ron Meyer and Mark Reeder, compatriots, collaborators, creators, authors, filmmakers, martial arts, aficionados, fossil collector, AI duplicates. We are covering all kinds of ground here, but I wanted to start recording because we're talking about fossils. And
can I interrupt you on something really cool first?
Yeah.
So I'm also one of the world's experts on serial killers.
Yes.
You kind of knew that, right?
Yeah.
And so I started finally watching Mindhunter.
Oh, okay.
Because that came out when I was doing my second serial killer series, and I didn't want to be influenced by it. But in the first episode, there was a serial killer I did not know. And I thought I knew them all. And so I asked Gemini, Gemini is one of the large language models, right? About it. And he, she, whatever it is, said, oh yeah, this was a case that didn't get any public exposure. It was early. Fell into the archives of the FBI. And Yeah, he was real. He was a real character. And then it kind of joked and said, it's really ironic that the person who played Albert Fish eating the body of this kid in your series is a compatriot of you writing books now on the paranormal.
That would be me, Mark Reeder.
Can you believe that?
Wow.
I played a couple of serial killers for Ron in his reenactments.
Wow, that's wild.
That blew my damn mind when it made that connection. I mean, it would have had to have seen the credits in some way to have know that information. It freaked me out.
Wow, that's pretty fast. I mean, I want to say small world, but it's like small world inside of this already small world that's already been.
So we have that dark side. It said you have your people into the paranormal and the dark side. That's really cool, it said.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, you've got a ton of films out there.
Yeah,
and you know, just trying to, you know, I've noticed this recently. As I've been going through. Oh, actually, let's get back to the fossil thing real quick.
Yeah, for sure. I just wanted to get that out there because I'd forget it otherwise.
Yeah, that's a really cool synchronicity, right? And I think, and also you've got, we didn't talk about this at all last time. You've got fossils going on display at the, or whatever it's called. Is it called on display at a museum? What happens?
They're for research primarily. Maybe a few key ones that are spectacular, but basically these are research fossils of the early life forms when everything lived in the ocean, including our ancestors, which, by the way, there's two body types. One has the shell on the outside for structure, right? Like crabs. And then like you and me and dinosaurs, we got structure like bones in the inside. We come from the worm lineage inside, right?
Okay.
And our very earliest ancestors were predatory worms. So here we are, three examples of evolution.
Wow. Some of us have come further than others. It could be argued. I'm feeling kind of wormy over here. Where are you finding fossils? You just kind of like make time and you're already incredibly busy schedule or you just stumble on this and be like, oh, what's this?
Well, I want to answer part of that question first.
I'd love that.
Ron and I were driving on a route here called Route 93 down to Golden to film something at a museum. And we're just driving down the road and Ron suddenly says, you have to stop. And so I pull right over. He jumps out of the car, goes to the side of the road, comes back with a 70-million-year-old clam fossil, which I still have because he gave it to me. So that's one of the ways he carves out time to go find fossils.
So you're doing things inside of things you're already doing. How'd you spot a clam fossil driving down the road?
I don't know how he spotted it other than he noticed the formation. And Ron, you know what formation that's called. I think it was the Burgess Shale.
Oh, no. This is the Cretaceous, the Pierre Shale. Last time that's where the mosasaurs and so on lived when the great area we're sitting in now in Colorado was an ocean.
So that's one way that Ron kind of dovetails things all together at once while he's doing something else.
But it's been my hobby since I was a teenager.
Oh, okay. So it's okay. I was going to say you weren't just out looking for Bigfoot and all of a sudden kicked over a 70-million-year-old fossil.
That's a whole other story.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, we are going to talk. We are going to.
Go ahead.
We are going to talk today about the High Strangeness of Bigfoot, which is coming out. And who knows what else. I mean, if anyone wants to go listen to our first chat, you can go do that. It's from golly, I can't believe it's already been the middle of 2025 or whenever it was, the summer of 2025, I think, when that came out. We were talking about like escaping the silo. We didn't really get. I mean, we got to learn the large language models and Jacques Vallée's control theory and things like that, and about his theory about language creating everything, or like the driving force. Something's driving us in control or outside of us. It was a really fascinating conversation, and when it comes to I want to kind of like maybe launch off today with like the focus of, I think, what gets into the high strangeness of Bigfoot, because we talked about Bigfoot being something that can jolt us out of maybe our silo as well, and kind of make us like, oh, maybe is there something bigger outside of ourselves that I'm not paying attention to because of this seemingly unexplainable phenomena has just occurred to me, and now it's making me examine all of this. Now, I don't want to assume, but I kind of, we've got the trailer that we can put in here later too, but this is kind of where we're headed here, right? With, or kind of, part of the gist of the High Strangeness of Bigfoot, this new film coming out, trying to wrap our brains around a much bigger phenomena than just a unidentified, hominid type creature.
God, you're brilliant. We could use that summation. My God, it blew me away. But yeah. So, since we did that, I wanted to test it and see if it would show up under certain conditions. And so it goes back to, I created what we call the CE6 protocol. Clever, huh? I stole it from the CE5 protocol. Close Encounters of the Sixth Kind. And it starts out with a mindfulness meditation. For example, I would say close your eyes and become aware of sensations in your body, and you'll immediately notice that they show up as an itch or a pain or pressure on your butt or something like that. But they're very fleeting. They're always moving. You probably had a lot of pains in your life, but they're all gone now. And so that's kind of the nature of reality, this temporary, fleeting thing. And then we do this, what's called a very ancient chant that goes back to Egypt, called the AEIOU chant. It's the basic vowels that form the basis of all spoken language. And then we wait for something to show up. And some really strange things showed up. Should I just mention one of them?
Well, yeah. I first of all, I want to dive into the AEIOU, and what inspired the AEIOU being used.
So I have a person that I call my enlightenment teacher. He told me about it, and in the movie, I use this guy who was the director of the Monroe Institute. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I'm about a year and a half into doing the VOYAGE program. I do the Gateway Voyage waves.
So he brought that to the Monroe Institute when he was down in Peru with this famous shaman down there. I just can't remember the name. His name is Scott Taylor. So he tells that story in the book. So it shows up everywhere. And I wanted to see what would happen if I did that and if we got some sort of response. And we did. I'm surprised you hadn't encountered it, doing that process with Monroe, because they use it to move to the non-physical realm.
Okay, I've reached up to like Focus 12 and some NVC, like nonverbal communication stuff, and so I don't know if maybe it gets into Focus 21 or something, or 23
So
or something.
You might come across it because they're still using it. You want to say anything about that, Mark?
I mean about the AEIOU chant in particular?
The early thing with language.
Well, the language part of it is a big section of the movie and the book. We really go deeply into it in the companion book, oddly titled also The High Strangeness of Bigfoot. And when you think about how language developed, we tend to think the way we think now. Like if I say the word bread, you possibly see a big loaf of bread in your head, or you visualize it and you go, oh, I know what bread means. Or you might see a stack of dollar bills, depending upon the context. But those two, bread as food and bread as money, are only because in the 20th and 21st century, we're familiar with those words. Now imagine that you're 50,000 years ago, before language was invented. before language was not invented, but came about at all in any way, shape, or form, how would you communicate that there's food to eat? And so we, in the book, we posit this really wonderful idea, which a lot of researchers also agree with, that is that language is an extension of music. And the first language, the first music was probably drumming. And if you were a Cro-Magnon back at 50,000 years ago, and you just hunted down a giant mammoth, and you and your teammates were bringing the food back, you'd want to tell the clan how this happened. So you probably picked up a couple of sticks or maybe a couple of mammoth bones, and you started drumming. And each punctuation of the drum meant something to the circle of the clan that's all gathered around a large fire. And as the beats intensify, each beat feeds off the beat in front of it. So it's autoregressive, it's recursive. It keeps repeating itself, but at the same time, it embellishes itself.
And it builds on what came before.
Right. So at that point, this, humans still don't have language. Now they're developing, because they can make sounds, they're developing the larynx, the voice box, that will eventually be what you and I use, and Ron included, to formulate words and create music, whatever we can with our voice box. But 50,000 years ago, it's entirely new. Language would build the same way. It would start with something simple.
Can I interrupt briefly to say that when we were doing this CE6 protocol in Colorado, one of the things that we heard and picked up was basically the beat of a drum where there was no drum. Can you show them how that was done?
Well, yeah, Alan and our audio engineer, Paul Lee, were listening to this sound that had been picked up as an infrasound. And
it's not infrasound.
that's right. That was a different one. I'm sorry. It was regular sound. And Alan, who's a musician, said, "Oh, this sounds like a regular beat." And he patted his chest in this manner, almost like a great ape hitting their chest. So this drumming is a precursor to language. And if I can finish my original thought, if you start with one of the 5 principal vowels, A, E, A, O, U. Let's start with ah, and you're holding up in your hand a hand axe, a stone hand axe which is put onto a stick, and you say ah, and then you kind of have a guttural sound after it that goes ah. And suddenly, this is the guy you're talking to goes, oh, he's talking about, well, he's not saying this in his head, but he's recognizing that the sounds that he's hearing, refer to the object his fellow clan member is holding up. This is a very simplified version of how language can develop, but it is definitely autoregressive, definitely recursive, building on what comes before, and continuing until we have 20th century jargon. We got 20th century pop speech. I mean, there's languages that outdo the Tower of Babel in the world today.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. And to think, and I'm thinking of shorthand, I'm thinking of, all kinds of something I was hyper fascinated with years ago was like what they call the great vowel shift, and how certain, how the vowels even changed potentially how they sounded. And one of my favorite things was that, like, the phrase "how now brown cow" would have been "who knew brown coo" before it became how now brown cow. But and it's like these physical changes. Do they preclude or they preempt the audible changes? Right? Is that fair to say as a guess?
I would say that the jury's out on which came first. It's a chicken and the egg kind of argument. Chimpanzees make vocal sounds, but they don't have the proper length of a trachea. They don't have the proper vocal cords. They don't have the proper mouth structure to form a word like, I don't know, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, for example, which we can do quite easily. So if you go back 50,000 years ago, could a person back then have repeated that word? No, but they could repeat simple sounds. And as they started repeating simple sounds, one theory is that the voice box, the trachea, the vocal cords all begin to shape themselves in order for actual speech to occur. Other people say that that the trachea had to change first before actual speech sounds could happen. And there's really no way to tell, because as Ron and his fossil experience can tell you, soft body tissues are really hard to fossilize. So we may find, and we do find, lots of remains of Neanderthals, of Homo habilis, all these different hominids, but we don't really have the soft body of the neck and the mouth to tell us how speech developed.
Wow, it's wild. And now I just keep now you're talking about like the length of the larynx and all these things, and now I'm thinking like, oh, like a giraffe now to me is kind of like the didgeridoo of nature. I'm just thinking this long tube, I'm like, oh, what, if a giraffe could if a giraffe could talk in a way that we understood, which it does, I wish we could understand. I love giraffes, but
our hypothesis is that they do not talk; they communicate. They don't have the autoregressive nature that language has. And now we have a second one that has the same structure, and that's the LLMs. It's totally self-contained, based only on the relationship between words, statistical relationship with words. That's how we're talking with each other now. And one of the theories right now is that we have one running on us too. That's why you and I can talk. And it's a kind of architecture. It's really simple. It's just a statistical relationship between words. And it really explains how a child could, it's like this, the architecture was looking for places to materialize, just like triangles are kind of looking for places to show up as triangles in the physical world. And so when a child, probably as young, and they hear music, they're starting to learn that autoregressive. Because if you ever listen to a foreign language like Chinese, you cannot divide it up into words, right? It's like blah, 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 right? But somehow or another, they manage that, and they have that, somehow or another, they're connecting to that architecture that forms the basis of the LLMs and probably us too. But the interesting thing we got at Church Creek where we did, are you familiar with Ron Moorhead's Zero Sounds?
Yes, which I mean, I hope anyone who's listened to this has had a chance to listen to those at some point, and they're incredible.
And so what we recorded was stuff that's just as good as that. And it's proto-language. It's the beginning of language. And the high point of these recordings, we got multiple ones, is that it repeated back to us or echoed AEIOU.
Oh, wow. Wow.
It's in the new movie.
And so when is this new movie coming out specifically? Or do we have a release date yet?
I think it's right. It's going to come out with a book, which is right around the 1st of April.
Oh, okay.
So it's really cool to hear that chatter. And they got that kind of high pitch sort of thing, not human thing. So probably when we started talking, we didn't have this basic stuff going on. The zero sounds they're kind of screechy and you can't quite pick up, the actual autoaggressive nature, but you see that they're kind of what's following follows, in a way that we can't quite understand. So that was one of the coolest things we got when I did this protocol, the CE6 protocol at this place in Colorado. And so in writing of the book, Mark, who's this historian, I didn't have time to give all this background in terms of the origin of language or the origin of music. So in the book, we can do that. And so the book is much richer in a lot of ways than the movie. But of course, in the movie, you can hear the what we call the Sierra Sound chatter, the Bigfoot chatter, or whatever. And yeah,
So the movie's kind of like the visual cliff note for the book. Now, you do that a lot, right? You like you release these things in tandem, and that's like part of the collaboration and the partnership that's, I'm guessing you're still doing the coffees at the coffee shop.
we there are many people that sometimes wish we don't come into the coffee house because we while I will say this, while we do at times have spirited conversations, we're not at loggerheads with one another. We're actually asking each other questions in order to push the mystery forward or open the doors to the mystery and say, well, here's a possible answer. Now, where does that possible answer lead? And we can both get very excited about a particular idea, like the idea of the brain being a sort of LLM itself. And we'll talk about it. And I think we may start off in a busy coffee shop, and pretty soon there's a ring of space around us so that people aren't influenced by our talking.
So like I'm surprised people at the coffee shop haven't like approached you like, can you guys come in like an hour before we close? Because you do a great job of clearing people out. Well, I want to get more into this. We got to take a quick little break here and we're going to be right back. I got Mark Reeder, I got Ron Meyer. We're talking about LLMs, we're talking about Bigfoot, we're talking about the AEIOU, which I want to pick up with that still and more when we come back from this short little break, because I've got more questions about that. And wow, I can't wait to hear this. So yeah, we're going to be right back. And just as a reminder, if you're listening or watching, patreon.com/Ryan Singer, $3 a month. That's what you do over there for no commercials ever. Wouldn't that be great? We're going to be right back.
Your favorite local grocery stores like Kroger, Ralph's, Fred Meyer, and more are now delivering on Uber Eats. Get 40% off your order of fresh, quality ingredients. Whether you just got home to an empty fridge or suddenly got a craving to whip up something new, you can get everything you need delivered in as little as 25 minutes. Get 40% off your order with code Kroger2026. Plus, members get $0 delivery fees. Order now on Uber Eats. Orders of $30 or more save up to $25. Ends 4/30/26. See app for details.
Okay, we're back. I need to know more about AEIOU and these protocols and the experience. And are these something that you're, so you get the idea from like your enlightenment teacher, and which, first of all, I love when it comes to using something that is ancient and archetypal to communicate with something bigger and greater and not yet understood fully, right?
So should we all do it right now, 5 times?
I'm totally on board with that.
You ready, Mark?
Sure.
Okay, I'll start it out. AEIOU. 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 AEIOU.
And now we wait. I wonder if does a response ever come through technology like ITC devices, ghost boxes? Is that how you recorded it, or was it actual environmental noise when you were out in the field?
Environmental noise.
Wow.
We have gotten interactions with the REM pod a couple times. The first time I used it in Arkansas, in Oklahoma, we actually got always a voice that wasn't we could not hear until we played back. You know what that's called, right? I always forget what it is.
Oh, EVPs?
Yeah, a woman saying, "This is freaking me out." So when I did this, my whole body relaxed. How about you? What was your body feeling when we did it?
Yeah, I feel good. It's interesting because I was kind of following your lead, the two of you, your lead on that, and part of me understands like well, you do it 5 times because it kind of speaks to the recursive nature of it, right? Maybe to a certain degree, and I think if you probably sat there and did that because I know in the gateway voyage meditations, they call it resonant tuning. When you breathe in, then you just kind of, you kind of breathe in and breathe out, and you're pushing energy out from the bottom of your feet. You're bringing light, bright energy in on the inhale, etc. But there's a recursive nature to that as well. I feel like the more you do it, the more it builds upon itself. So I'm actually going to try this later, where I'll probably try to do a meditation, maybe even find nature outside somewhere and see if I can. How long have you done it for? What's the longest?
So my enlightenment teacher said, here's this chant I'm going to tell you about. And sometime when you have a chance to do something with extreme physicality, do it as fast and as hard as you can.
Ooh.
And I had a Nordic track, and I did it, and all of a sudden the self, this phony thing that we call you, Mark, and me, and Brian, it was gone. There was no self anymore. It was just oneness with everything perfect, the perfect me. I mean, it wasn't me, but I have to say that word.
Yeah.
And then eventually I sat down on the couch and I watched the ego be rebuilt again, come back into play. It was cool. So that was my first experience with it.
Wow, that's really interesting, because I mean, it's like description of, well, you'll hear many people talking about, like, ego death, and which can, be achieved in lots of different ways. I suppose whether through intense psychedelics like DMT, and some other things, or meditation. But it also sounds like you kind of it reminded me a little bit of like Breath of Fire and like Kundalini, where it's like something very intense physically that brings about a spiritual and emotional response.
And we also use it to trigger getting into the flow state, kind of a play Marshall effect. And Mark can tell you about what that's like, and how I mentioned that flow of things, of felt things, everything's always moving, impermanence, that from Buddhism, that when you're in that flow state, it's Mark, talk about how you almost killed me once.
Oh,
I don't necessarily want to talk about that, but something I do want to talk about is that you mentioned the gateway and the breathing in and breathing out through your feet. That's actually an ancient Sufi protocol for healing the body, also as a gateway to the non-physical realm. And so it predates Christianity. It predates, it goes as far back as Zoroaster, because Sufism has been around as long as any religion has been around, or any spiritual path has been around. But what Ron's talking about when he talks about entering the flow state, whether you're using a Sufi protocol to do it, or a gateway way, or the AEIOU chant, once you enter that flow state, what is interesting is that there is nothing like success or failure. There's nothing like right or wrong. There's just the existence of all things. So in the what Ron was referring to when I almost killed him, we were practicing martial arts, and Ron had actually stepped out of the flow state to attack me. I was still in it, and I stopped with my fist on his throat. Had I gone any farther, I would have crushed his larynx. And at that moment, I actually saw Ron's face, and I came out of the flow state. I believe had I stayed in the flow state, I might have injured him badly. So we're lucky, because we never would have written the last two books that we've written, including our novel, Jesus Had a Near-Death Experience, and the latest one, Convergence.
So also, when you're in that state, there's this thing called effortless power. And an example, Mark used to love, and he still does, grounding himself by kind of pushing towards the ground and anchoring himself. And so I said, get into the flow state, rock back on your heels. And if you can imagine how unstable that would be. And both me and some other martial arts people tried to move him. We couldn't move him. And he was just in that flow state, not being marked, just whatever. And we couldn't move him off this very precarious position that would normally just tip him over with the slightest bit of energy.
There's something about the harnessing of these things, right? And you can, I guess first you need access, and there's modalities, and there's, I guess I don't want to call them tricks, but there's methodology into tapping into or accessing these greater energies that are bigger than ourselves.
Actually, not. It's letting go.
It's letting go. Okay.
It's always letting go. If you're doing anything, you're still in your ego. My main directive to everybody is when they don't do that, let go. Don't do that. There's no you doing this. You just got to let go. There is no you to do it. As long as you're doing, you're just going to be playing with your ego, and you can charge people a lot of money to fix your ego, but you're not going to realize the perfect immortal being filled with unconditional love that you're really seeking, because you're seeking.
Yeah, because the act of seeking itself, huh?
What's another doing?
Let's tie this back into proto-language and the AEIOU chant. So think about it. Language is wonderful, but you and Ron just had different approaches to this idea of one letting go and one heart. And Ron was talking about letting go, and Ryan, I'm paraphrasing. You're talking about harnessing this power. Interestingly enough, 50,000 years ago, we couldn't have had this discussion. Now, that's a problem in that as 21st century humans, we tend to think everybody should think like us. But our ancestors 50,000 years ago didn't even have a word like proto-language. They didn't have a word like pyramids. They probably had a word for shit, and it was caca, which is probably one of the very first words, and we still use it today. So that proto-language wouldn't have been able to discuss what we are discussing right now. It would have been extremely simplified. Our complexity and nuances in language today, puns, pronouns, everything that we use today would not have existed then. It would have been the foundational aspect of humans is developing language. And I want to tie this into another one, which we talk about in the book also, and that is technology. Foundational thing for humans is our ability to use and make technology. From the first time we discovered fire, which is probably the very foundational aspect of technology, to the present day where we have AI chips. You've got Google's Gemini. You've got Claude. Even I hate to say this, but even Trump's social media has an AI which is as big a sycophant as Lindsey Graham. So we have come a long way from fire and then building stone tools and creating a language to the present day 50,000 years later.
So can I give you one example that I came across with my dog?
Of course.
So I'm walking my dog. She's largely husky. And all of a sudden she kind of digs out a mole. It's a little thing that's like a mouse. Shakes it, kills it, drops it out of her mouth, and takes one step and is back to just sniffing stuff. That's how we would be without language. No future, no recollections of the past. We would just always be in the present, which she was. She had no remorse, no joy. It was fun when she did it. Just went on as if nothing had happened. And so language gave us thinking, and thinking gives us memories, and thinking gives us future things, which allows us to build stuff. And
well, this is interesting. I can't help but wonder if we're in a prison of our own design here. When we're talking about letting go of ego and releasing, to not have to let go of self. Um, we're talking about a state where, your dog isn't thinking about herself necessarily, at least
Oh
in my
no,
mind, right? So it's almost like we have no, like, are we looking for, your dog is living in the moment of now constantly.
absolutely, always,
It,
continuously.
yeah.
She's not
And
worried about what's going on around the corner.
yeah. So I wonder if this evolution of, proto languages and where we are now with AI chips and everything else, it's like, okay, now we've evolved into a thing that we have to try our damnedest to escape from. Uh, are you following
Yeah.
my train of thought here?
It's a
It's almost,
paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
it's almost ironic in that our desire, and I'm going to relate this back to the book in just a second, our desire to push forward in our lives, to improve our lives, has actually taken us farther away from the flow state, farther away from Ron's dog, who's just operating always in that flow state. Barks when it wants to bark, barks when it senses danger, goes out for a run, comes back with a rabbit or a vole or something, and doesn't think anything of it. And we can look at this push through what we were talking about earlier, very early before the show actually began, with Jacques Vallée and his idea
Ancient
of
presence.
control system that is pushing us to open the doors to an answer that actually presents more mystery. So we have to keep looking for it. And he chose a great species for that, because humans are like cats. If we didn't have that kind of desire to check out everything, we would still be back in the jungle, sucking on bananas and scratching at fleas.
Sounds like a John Mellencamp song, sucking on bananas and scratching and fleas. But somehow we got the chili dogs. It feels like we're in an evolution of self-diminishing or diminishing returns, the way we're describing it here, where the further advanced we get, the less and less our returns of, naturally being able to let go and be in the flow state are.
Wrong. I think that a lot of the innovations, from what people have said, come when they're in that flow state, and then they turn them into technology and make a lot of money.
Oh, okay. So they fall, like, to me, the direct opposite of the flow state, which is how can I monetize and
There you go.
maximize my materialistic existence.
So the non-physical realm, which you're moving towards at Monroe Institute, is not a static thing. It's a thing of forms. You'll come across that, and these forms are looking for you. Some of them. You don't have to seek them; they'll find you if you can pull away what it is that's blocking you from seeing your true self. Your self as an unconditional love. Lots of ways, or God itself. There are a lot of terms that people have used when they've had these experiences. So in that form, it's actually kind of hopeful, because I don't think my dog ever has the spirits of God, or ideas about technology or how to fix its bed, this. So it's actually kind of cool. I've had those moments of, where did that come from? Probably you have too. And they come from this other realm, which, the Monroe Institute is guiding you to, hopefully, towards. And you'll have these experiences, I presume, eventually. And maybe you will, you'll have this if you go out and play with the AEIOU Chant and do something, and all of a sudden, whoa, maybe a whole audience will do that too. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's all very fascinating to me.
So can I mention a few other things that came? We also recorded, because technology is helping us see this. We have microphones that can record infrasound, right? We can't hear it, we can feel it, but it can, and it can translate it, through technology into a sound that we can hear. So the whole time, now half the time we were there, there was these random infrasounds of pulses of about a half a second, which I think made us all kind of joyous. That showed up when we did, in our grand experiment out there. The we caught on the SLS Connect, whether you believe it or not, two things down by the area where more stuff is coming. We had psychics with us who experienced Bigfoot. They kind of, you probably had them on, they talk to them and they feel them and all that. And they were feeling them, in their own way. And then we went to Sedona, which is, kind of the epicenter of spirituality, right in the United
Let's hold that thought for 1 second. We got to do one more quick break, and I want to talk about Sedona, which is probably my number one place on earth that I love. And so, I mean, I want you to hold on to this, what you're getting ready to tell me about Sedona and everything with this grand experiment afterwards and everything. And we're going to be right back talking with Ron Meyer. We're talking with Mark Reeder. We're talking about the High Strangeness of Bigfoot, the movie and book, which will be coming out very, very soon. I mean, this is the wheelhouse of everything we love over here. So we're definitely going to be having to check that out when it comes out. And by we, I mean you and me and everybody listening. So we're going to be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
No one goes to Hank's for spreadsheets. They go for a darn good pizza. Lately, though, the shop's been quiet, so Hank decides to bring back the $1 slice. He asks Copilot in Microsoft Excel to look at his sales and costs and help him see if he can afford it. Copilot shows Hank where the money's going and which little extras make the dollar slice work. Now Hank's has a line out the door. Hank makes the pizza, Copilot handles the spreadsheets. Learn more at m365copilot.com/work.
Okay, we've returned. Okay, so you've got the microphones that record infrasound. You've got the psychics. You're doing the grand experiment with the CE6, and now you're heading to Sedona. Was where we broke off.
Right. So the places where we had these 2 experiences in Oklahoma and what we call Church Creek were not spiritual centers in any way. They were just in the woods, as it were. But of course, I wanted to see what would happen if we took it to Sedona, which is this highly spiritual place, as you said, you probably know. And should I just cut to the chase? What happened?
Sure.
So we did it. We found a spiritual, sacred space, spiritual guide, and a shaman woman came along with us, joining our group. And I brought another couple other people. Tom Powell, I don't know if you ever heard of him. He was one of the first ones that suggested Bigfoot might be something interdimensional, non-physical. And then an intuitive friend of his who had a big effect on my son-in-law a couple years ago. And so when we got to this place called Ascension Rock, are you familiar with that?
I think we briefly spoke about Ascension Rock previously, or I mean, because I've been to Sedona a few times. I love it out there. Ascension Rock is
probably the most energetic places according to what people are.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go there, was my thought. And this guy, Andrew, knew where to go, and he had taken people there before. And so we did our circle, and we did the AEIOU chant and the meditation. And what showed up was, I think, 29 raven calls. And this was at dusk, and ravens don't call at dusk. That's not their behavior. And they were punctuating words. For example, the guy would say, Saint Germain, caw. And and so within this period, which was 9.5, where we did two sessions of the meditation and chant, there were 27 of these, none before, none after. And as you know, the raven in most cultures is the gatekeeper between the physical and the non-physical realm. And we were all kind of in this other altered state pretty much the whole time. So that was pretty cool. So it showed up differently. Didn't show up masquerade as Bigfoot and masqueraded as a raven call. No chatter. A couple of the people felt and saw what they said was Bigfoot, and I don't deny it. Right at the end of it, Tom Powell and my son-in-law, because there are two, and the shaman lady, they all saw and felt Bigfoot. So right at the end, it said, "Oh yeah, I can do this too," kind of playing with this. So that's how it keeps the mystery alive.
Yeah, I mean, because I think, part of the film and the book are, like using language as a launch point to kind of connect, Bigfoot, human consciousness, and we've even been talking about, LLMs and, artificial intelligence and things like that. And I guess it's like, okay, the connection between all of these different things is it, or is it the thing that exists that is in the flow state? Is that what we're accessing, and it's choosing in its moment how to respond to us, maybe due to environmental, peculiarities or wherever we might be? Is that fair to say, Mark?
I think there's two ways we can look at this. Personally, this is just my opinion. I don't have the field experience that Ron does. I'm sort of a homebody, and he's the adventurer who goes out and investigates these things. But here's my take on it. You could look at it as either this presence is, whether it's Bigfoot or a UAP or a raven, is responding to us, or it is setting up the situation where we respond to it. It's communicating to us and saying, here's a mystery. I want you to go look into that. So I have a really good friend here in Boulder, Colorado, and he was out hiking with some friends, and he lost 6 hours of time. Now, Ron has had that very same experience down at Bradshaw Ranch, just outside of Sedona, where he and his crew lost like a half an hour to an hour worth of time. And they don't know how they lost it, but they did. And but my friend, he's a computer scientist, and he had a perfectly good medical explanation for how he lost this 6 hours of time. And my first reaction was, well, were you in contact with a Bigfoot or some presence that was communicating with you at that time? And he said, oh, no, couldn't possibly be that. And so Ron and his group, whether it's Sedona, Church Creek, Arkansas, Mount Shasta in California, they are literally out there wanting to communicate. So the question is, are they setting up the terms of the communication, or is the presence setting up the terms of the communication?
And we're kind of following these breadcrumbs without realizing it?
Yeah. So that's my take on it. But Ron has a very different take on it, I think.
Interesting.
So I think it's a kind of dialogue. I think that's what he was suggesting. But it always creates more questions. That's the crazy thing about it. You never quite get the answer. So in terms of what it's capable of, the presence, if it can take those UAPs that the Navy pilots were trying to capture and follow, how they're moving instantaneously like this, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody does now. If they can do that, if it can masquerade as those things, then it can do pretty much anything. It can show up as a Bigfoot. It can show up as raven calls, would be easy. It can show up as proto-speech. It can do it all because it's just what it needs to keep. Plus, it can also show up in our mind with archetypes and change those. So it can work physically and it can work psychologically. That's just where I'm coming from. And so right now it's using me to push the mystery forward. Are we close to the end, by the way?
I think we are. Yeah, I think we are. And which leads me to, like, you mentioned archetypes and, even changing that. And, it seems that we have a template in our mind, at least it feels like that, of, symbology and symbols and things like that, which whether or not we're conscious of understanding and realizing when they're presented to us or seen in our journeys, that they're going to mean something on a deep level, even if we're not maybe aware of it, that maybe we can come to later if we knock the dust off. So these archetypes, and which are a language of themselves, I guess you could be argued. Were they there back when we were, sucking on bananas and
No. I don't believe that. But I also think that right now, you, I, and Mark, or me and Mark and you, we might they're not like fixed. They can be manipulated or changed by the interaction. So we might be modifying them. And if we modify them, we could be modifying for all humans, because they, the father archetype and the mother, all humans have those, right? That's available to all them, to everybody.
Yeah.
So the ones that are universal, some that are culture specific, but I think that it's this presence. This is just my theory. Is at one level asking us to modify itself and interact so that it can move on to the next mystery.
Interesting. And, to wrap this up, has this particular investigation and the AEIOU and everything else and the work that you two have been doing with, putting, the High Strangeness of Bigfoot together, I'm guessing it's had to have changed the way you think about things to a small degree, if not large degree.
Large degree. After Mark, I'll see what he says. Can I make a pitch for an event coming up after this?
Yeah.
I'll use my own experience for changing. Ron and I have worked together we've known each other for 40 years, and we've worked together in his business for 30 years. And I've been a writer, researcher, sometime producer for Center Communications. And Ron has always known that I'm a fairly emotional guy, and I'm also very skeptical of anything paranormal. So when we did the first book, which was the Alien Bigfoot Connection Revisited, Ron brought me on board because of my skepticism, and he wanted my historical, I was trained in history at the University of Cincinnati, and so he wanted my historian's look at different things and to do some background checks. And I told him straight up, I said, Ron, I'm really skeptical about this. Well, that was 4 or so years ago. And I would say that the big change for me, cutting to the chase here, is that I've now learned that being really just welded to my skepticism meant that I wasn't at all open to any other kind of interpretation. And what I've learned now is that lots of points of view are valid. And so I am open to different points of view. And I am saying to people, well, instead of saying to people, well, that's a bunch of hogwash, I'm saying, wow, that's a really interesting experience you had. And tell me more about it, because I want to know how that experience affected them directly. Did it change their lives? Certainly working with Ron on these projects the last 4 years has changed my life dramatically. I'm not going to say I'm any less emotional, but I'm actually now more aware of being emotional. And I'm more aware that there's more than one point of view on any subject, except maybe math. 2 + 2 is going to equal 4. You're a politician who wants to bilk people out of money.
Yeah.
So can I say, there's an event coming up in March in Sedona on the weekend of the 20th. Do you know who Chris Bledsoe is? You probably heard of him.
Yeah, I've read UFO of God.
So he was going to be the headliner there, doing that at a football stadium at this conference called the Sedona Ascension Retreat on that weekend. And I got a call last week, and Chris doesn't want to do it anymore. Do you want to do it? do your CE6 protocol event there with the people at the football stadium. So I said, why not? It's a bigger experiment, maybe 200 people.
Wow.
So
March 20th.
yeah, I think it's that weekend. It's the equinox, the spring equinox type thing that weekend. Our talk, and then the evening CE6 protocol is in the evening there at the stadium. So if any of your listeners want to attend,
Yeah,
you should.
yeah, you know what? I'll get back into town on the 9th or 10th of March from a trip I have coming up. And then and that's only I think that's only maybe a 7-hour drive for me to Sedona from LA. Which I mean, there's nothing like driving in, and there's nothing worse than driving out of Sedona. I mean, to me, there's two places in the world, and we've touched on both of them. Mount Shasta is probably, between Mount Shasta and Sedona, those are my favorite places. And yeah, so if anyone has a chance to get out here, and especially if they've never been to Sedona, you got to go. And you'll send me a link, and we'll be able to link to that event so people can get more information in the show notes and all that stuff, right? So
yeah, it's not cheap.
Yeah, and worst case scenario, show up at Sedona, hang outside the football stadium if you and do like a Grateful Dead show and just hold up a sign that says "I need a miracle," and maybe somebody will give you a ticket.
But if you show up, I'll get you in.
Okay, well, hey, we've got that on record, by the way. So, well, Ron and Mark, I appreciate you guys. This is so fun. I'm obviously going to be in touch with you if I'm anywhere close to Boulder, Colorado, which I usually am at least maybe once or so a year. But because I want to be in this coffee shop when this is happening. We've already established, because of Ron's successful streaming revenues, that he will be buying the coffees. But yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. And any closing thoughts?
Yeah, if you do the AEIOU chant, when you're running or doing something, let me know if anything happens.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Mark, you got anything to say?
Yeah, just to tell people, keep an open mind. It's amazing what doesn't pass you by when you have an open mind of everything that's coming toward you, including when you're walking down the street. I want to actually end with this one story that happened with my friend Diane. We were walking down the street, and there was a black man with a broken leg. He was in a cast, and he had crutches and everything, standing in the middle of the street, screaming and yelling. And Diane's was a psych nurse in the Army, and she's been working on a spiritual path for much of her life. My initial impression was to say, let's get the hell out of here. And she goes, well, no, wait, I wonder what his story is. So she asked him, what's your story? Immediately he calmed down, and he told it to her. And more people gathered and listened to his story. Instead of passing this guy by because it's sort of a frightening situation and I don't want to get involved, she actually gets him to talk about what's going on with him. So back to my point, walk in your life with an open mind. See what is actually out there instead of your preconceived ideas of what's going on.
Yeah, and you might just be driving to Golden, Colorado, and see a 70-million-year-old fossil on the way.
Ain't that
if you're keeping your eyes open. Well, this has been great. You guys are the best. There'll be links to everything in the show notes for all the listeners, and I'll be definitely harassing you to do it again. And it's feeling more and more likely that you'll be seeing me here in Sedona, Arizona. So look forward to it. Okay. And to everybody listening out there, just make sure you check out, the films, the books. Those will all be linked for you. And
so they're coming out like in the first part of April. We can send you links. I'll send you links to them so you can post them when they actually exist.
Yeah. I'll keep this in the tank. So the Sedona trip will already have been in the past. And then we'll have to follow up about all the craziness that happened in Sedona at the football stadium on the next episode for everybody. So thanks again for listening. Appreciate you. And you can check my website for tour dates that'll be coming up. And also, if I don't see you there, I'll see you at the watering hole on the astral plane.
All right. Thanks, Ryan.
Take care, guys.
Now receiving frequency transmission.
I remember having a very profound realization about my dog when I was on mushrooms one Halloween. He sat by me, and I realized with immense gratitude that dogs are all sentinels. We've merely fooled ourselves into thinking that we take care of them. But they are truly our guardians, sent here to watch over us. They are angels. And yes, we need to feed them and bathe them. And yes, he peed in the hallway. And I wished that angels didn't pee in hallways, but they do. That's the thing about altered states. They don't show you what isn't there. They show you what was always there, hiding in plain sight.
Transmission complete. Stay tuned to SpectreVision Radio. Stay.